The first companion you'll be introduced to in Warframe is a Sentinel, Taxon specifically. Not counting variants like Primes, there are 10 Sentinels in total to build, use and master. So I'll show you what they can do, how they compare to each other, and which of their weapons you should care about. I'm the Engineer, let's solve a practical problem. With 10 unique Sentinels, 15 including variants, keeping track of which ones you have, their mods, and what parts you still need to farm or buy can be a bit cumbersome with Warframe's inventory system. If you're on PC, you can get help with that with the sponsor of this video. AlecaFrame is a powerful third-party companion app on PC designed to make your Warframe inventory simple to manage. Recently, it has gained a sleek new look, as well as improved integration with Warframe.market, making it easier than ever to trade your items. It also has a whole new Riven section showing you what Rivens you have, how high each stat is, and it gives you a seamless way to list your Riven for sale or auction. This means you spend less time fiddling with your inventory, allowing you to get back on with playing Warframe. Even there, AlecaFrame's relic overlay helps you choose the best relic and best reward for every fisher. So download AlecaFrame for free now with the link in the video description. With your inventory in better shape than ever, let's see what Sentinels have to offer. There are a few key features which are universal to all Sentinels. They are bound to your Warframe, hovering just a bit above your shoulder and following wherever you go. Most of the time, being close to your frame means that they are not the target of attacks, you are. Still, Sentinels will take damage from stray shots, area attacks, or even be targeted if enemies cannot target your frame. Unlike other companions, Sentinels do not go into bleed out and recovery when they are dropped to 0 health. Instead, they just pop. To get around this, you can use the regen and primed regen mods to let the Sentinel cheat death up to 3 times. You can also use the Dispensary Augment Repair Dispensary or Parazon mod Hard Reset to reconstruct your Sentinel during a mission if it has died. Otherwise, once it's gone, you're on your own for the rest of the mission. Sentinels will only attack if given a precept to do so, such as Assault mode, and they also hold fire if you are invisible or if the enemy is unalerted. The Sentinel can still use its other precepts whilst you're being stealthy. On the topic of precepts, these are effectively abilities you assign to your Sentinel, denoted by the Penjaga symbol, which is a vertical line with a dot next to it. All Sentinels come with 10 mod slots, including some built-in Penjaga polarities, giving you plenty of room for precepts and support mods. As Sentinels do not have casting stats like Strength or Duration, you're not choosing between Survival and Strength like you might on a Warframe. Sentinels act autonomously, and as such the priority they give to their precepts is based on the mod order you slot them in. The top row have priority over the bottom row of mods, and mods to the left have priority over the mods to the right on the same row. For this reason, I recommend putting Assault mode, if you're using it, in the last or second last slot on your Sentinel. It'll still fight for you as you need it to, but this fighting won't interrupt the other abilities your Sentinel can activate. Some mods, however, like Regen or Vacuum, are passive and don't conflict with other precepts. Each Sentinel has unique precepts, which I'll walk you through, as well as access to additional precepts available to all Sentinels, or even all robotic companions entirely. Each Sentinel also has its own signature weapon unlocked when crafting the Sentinel, although Sentinel weapons can be swapped freely between Sentinels once you have them built. The only exception to this is Deconstructor, usable by Helios only. I'll cover the weapons at the end of this video, and I've put timestamps in the description to help you find what you're looking for. Up first, everyone's starter companion, the Taxon. This cross-shaped floaty boy has relatively little going for it long term, but that's to be expected of starter equipment. The Taxon has only one unique precept mod, Molecular Conversion. This allows Taxon to periodically zap one nearby enemy and convert the damage done into shields for you. It is restricted in a few ways. Taxon will only target an alerted enemy within 10 meters. It only recharges shields based on a damage done after modifiers to a max of 200 shields, and it has a cooldown of 12 seconds. For mid-game players and above, this is of very little value, especially getting such reduced benefit from highly armoured enemies. For low-level players, however, this can be a helpful survival tool where up to 200 hit points every 12 seconds can make quite the difference. It's a starter companion with a mod that's designed to help newer players, who would have guessed. Once you get hold of mods like Guardian and Shield Charger, which can be applied to all robotic companions, the value of molecular conversion drops off significantly. Likewise, using a Warframe which doesn't benefit from a little bit of extra shields, like Rhino, will again push out Taxon. So when you're ready to move past Taxon, you can turn your attention to the market. The blueprints for Carrier, Dethcube, Diriga, Shade, and Wyrm are all available from the market for credits, meaning you can dive into those as soon as you get the materials. For most of those, it's the same materials including nanospores, locking these Sentinels until you have access to Saturn. However, Diriga's highest requirement is simply Argon crystals, which you can reliably farm as soon as opening up the Void from Phobos. Once built, Diriga comes with the innate Precepts Electropulse and Arc Coil. Unlike Taxon's focus on defense through generating additional shields, Diriga focuses on control through the use of electric damage and stuns. Arc Coil will strike up to 7 enemies within 10 meters for a token amount of damage, with a 10% chance to briefly stun each struck enemy. In practical terms, this is pretty minimal. Electropulse on the other hand is more impactful, almost fully locking down a single enemy with an onslaught of non-damaging electric procs. You cannot choose which enemy is locked down, and they must be within 15 meters of Diriga in order to be zapped. Once again, the practical application is limited given how Warframe doesn't tend to fling just 1 or 2 enemies at you at a time. I would advise moving on from Diriga as soon as possible as it just doesn't achieve much. Next, we have Wyrm. Wyrm also focuses on control and defense to support your Warframe, but in a wholly different manner. Its unique precept mod on construction is the Crowd Dispersion Precept. The mod suggests it does a 10 meter radial stun when multiple enemies are nearby. What it actually does, once 2 or more enemies are in range, it'll very strongly knock back and ragdoll all enemies within 10 meters. Enemies which are immune to crowd control, such as Xmas units, are unaffected. This literal crowd dispersion has a relatively long 15-second cooldown and can potentially get in the way of you actually targeting and killing enemies when they're flying away from you. It's defensive, but perhaps a little bit impractical. Wyrm is also the first of the Sentinels in this video to have a gold unique precept available from Cephalon Samaris. For Wyrm, that's the mod Negate. When a status effect would be applied to you, Negate will block that status effect and then go on a 5-second cooldown. In theory this could be helpful, similar to the mod Rolling Guard. However, in practical gameplay, the mod feels, shall we say, leaky. Enemies can proc normal and inconsequential status effects on you quite frequently. A puncture proc here, a barely hurting slash proc there, these little things which can trigger Negate when you might want that defense a moment later for something more threatening. Negate does block some of the more dangerous status effects you can encounter, such as preventing a magnetic status effect from Energy Leech Xmas or from Sensor Barrier Doorways. But again, any wayward status proc, like from an Explosive Barrel's blast proc, can put your defense on cooldown at the wrong moment. If something puts out multiple status procs, like Electric Traps or Arson Xmas, they will not be fully negated by Wyrm. Arson Xmas in particular will hit you with both a knockdown and a heat proc. The knockdown will be blocked, but not the heat damage over time. If you have another buff which will negate a status effect but doesn't grant you invulnerability, it will still be triggered simultaneously with Negate. For example, the mod Prime Sure-Footed will fully block knockdown, but Negate will also be consumed in attempting to block the knockdown, still leaving you vulnerable to the heat of an Arson Xmas. So Negate does exactly what it says on the tin, it's just of low overall use. The next Sentinel Shade takes an altogether different approach to supporting your defense. Rather than trying to control enemies, it comes with the unique precept Ghost. When you come within 10 meters of an enemy, you become invisible until you either make an attack with a weapon, do a normal jump, get a kill, move out of the 10 meter range of all enemies, or go AFK for a minute. It's a little inconsistent, and sometimes you may keep your invisibility after a kill or jump. Whatever ends up breaking your invisibility, Ghost then goes on to cooldown for 10 seconds before it can be re-triggered. Casting an ability, rolling, sprinting and bullet jumping will not break your invisibility, so long as it doesn't cause one of the other end conditions. This means that Ghost is a bit of an odd form of invisibility. It allows you to sneak around enemies, but if you move beyond the range or do most things a Warframe is designed to do, you lose your stealth for a not insignificant amount of time. You can use it to sneak past small clusters of enemies or try to evade a sticky moment, but just be aware that enemies will continue firing at your last known location for a short while after you go invisible, so you'll need to move away from the spot where you do so. Shade's gold precept from Cephalon Samaris is Ambush. Very simply, it grants up to 120% additive weapon damage for 3 seconds upon ending the ghost invisibility. For early game, this is a significant boost, though it is only for 3 seconds. Into late game weapon modding however, where even a single arcane is providing 360% damage bonus, an additional 120% on top for just a few seconds doesn't make much of a difference. By the time you're at the stage where you can happily drop 75,000 standing with Solaris, I'd wager this mod will have already fallen off and could be replaced with something more broadly useful. Moving on to Dethcube. As the name would suggest, this is a more offensive focused Sentinel. Its initial unique precept is the Vaporize mod. It has a base damage of 600, which is amplified by the pure damage and elemental damage mods on the Sentinel's weapon, regardless of the weapon's own stats. So for example, using a Sentinel weapon modded with a half upgraded Serration for plus 90% damage, 4 pip infected clip for 75% toxin damage, and a max rank Stormbringer for 90% electric damage, which is a total of exactly 30 mod drain, the damage from Vaporize would be 1140 radiation and 1881 corrosive. That's just enough to one-shot a level 39 heavy gunner, which isn't bad going for an early game Sentinel weapon. With some significantly more expensive modding, we can increase this to one-shot all the way up to a level 61 heavy gunner. The Vaporize precept has a 10-second cooldown, but that's still an enemy deleted every 10 seconds on the star chart with appropriate modding and damage type. Dethcube's gold precept mod, Energy Generator, helps to support your own ability output. Every 10 kills and assists Dethcube gets, it drops an energy orb. It's just one energy orb, nothing too much to write home about, but that is still another source of energy to support cast heavy builds. Because this is an energy orb, it also stacks with orb enhancements such as Arcane Energize and Amber Archon Shards, in addition to working with the passive abilities of Lavos and Hildrin. Unlike many Sentinel mods then, this one can continue to scale in usefulness as you find other upgrades, rather than being outclassed. Last of the market source Sentinels, we have Carrier. Carrier's initial precept mod is Ammo Case, passively increasing the maximum ammo reserves of your weapon by up to 25%, and is able to convert primary or secondary ammo pickups into the opposite variant for whichever weapon you are currently holding. This overrides any ammo mutation mods and will give you 100% of a matching ammo pickup after a couple seconds. In effect, you double your total ammo income versus having no ammo mutation at all. But if you're still short on ammo, or generally just want more loot, Carrier's gold precept is the Looter mod. This will passively destroy nearby loot crates as you go about the mission. Every couple of seconds, Carrier will send out a subtle wave to pop those crates if it has line of sight to them. This means you don't need to focus on shooting the crates yourself, also saving ammo in the process, to continue to get the goodies. If you're using an AoE weapon everywhere, then this doesn't matter as much, but it can find you plenty of pickups you otherwise would skip over, especially Iron Stars or rarer materials like Entrati Lanthorns. Putting these two together, Carrier can help you get more loot and help you get more ammo to shoot. In a game genre called a looter-shooter, I consider that rather helpful. Now, having exhausted the blueprints available on the market, we have to turn our attention to the labs in the clan dojo. This is a lot easier if you join an existing clan, but if you're committed to complete solo play, then you can spend a huge amount of additional resources building your own labs. In the Energy Lab, you'll be able to replicate a blueprint for Helios, which comes with the Investigator precept once constructed. Helios is the tourist of Sentinels, using your codec scanner or synthesis scanner to scan anything it can see within 50 meters that hasn't already been fully scanned into your codex. This will not give you any standing with Cephalon Samaris, but it will allow you to passively fill up your codex, both for completion purposes and to allow you to summon those enemies into the simulacrum for testing your builds against them. These scans also include plants, loot crates and even Cephalon fragments if you've not got around to scanning them yourself. Crucially, once something is fully scanned into the codex, Investigator will not trigger on it anymore, so there is a limit to Helios' tourism. The gold precept for Helios expands on this scanning feature. Once an enemy type has been fully scanned into the codex, the precept mod Detect Vulnerability will make Helios mark small random weak points on the enemies it scans. This weak spot doesn't count for a headshot, but it does enhance your damage to as much as 3.75 times the original amount, multiplicative after all other calculations. Unfortunately, this precept is very slow to work, marking only one enemy at a time, anywhere within range, pretty much choosing at random, and the mark only lasts for about 10 seconds. Generally speaking, hunting down a single mark on one enemy for boosted damage once isn't very efficient. You'll be better served by just shooting enemies normally. Because of that, I'd say this precept is mostly a waste of a slot. Keep Helios as a photographer, and then shelve it once you finish scanning that particular area. Heading back to the clan dojo, this time in the bio lab, you'll be able to pick up the Djinn Sentinel blueprint. Once it's built, this comes with a Fatal Attraction precept. Fatal Attraction is a curious ability, charming and drawing a group of enemies in towards Djinn before releasing an explosion of 250 damage. By the time you're happy to drop 6 mutagen masses and 2 former on building a Sentinel, there's a good chance that 250 damage is pretty underwhelming. Really what you're left with is a crowd control ability that only lasts for a moment and then has a 30-second cooldown, whilst also seeming to increase how often the enemies will shoot at Djinn rather than your Warframe. This leads to it dying quite a bit more often than most Sentinels. Almost as if to counter this, Djinn's gold precept mod is Reawaken. At max rank, Djinn will respawn 90 seconds after dying. This however doesn't restore any charges on regen, doesn't give Djinn any immortality, and you're still without a companion for 1.5 minutes. Typically speaking, if you're in a mission that has burned through all of Djinn's lives from regen, it's probably not going to last too long once it reawakens. So if you really want a Sentinel that can self-revive, this is technically the only one to use, but there are entire categories of companions more suited for longer endurance runs if your companion is at risk of death. So mostly, Djinn is not where it's at. With Djinn mastered, the final 2 Sentinels to acquire require quite a bit more work to get hold of, assuming you're not dropping any platinum. Oxylus can be picked up from the business Infortuna, with its blueprint costing 20,000 standing. While the standing is very doable, it's locked behind one of the less appreciated grinds, requiring rank 5 with Solaris United. Once constructed, Oxylus comes with not 1 but 2 unique precepts straight away: Scan Aquatic Lifeforms and Scan Matter. Scan Aquatic Lifeforms will show on your minimap the location of nearby fishing hotspots, where spawns are higher and bait is effective. Look for the orange fish symbol. It also applies luminous dye to fish within 40 meters, saving on grabbing the dyes yourself from the fishing vendor in Malysitos. It's a helpful quality of life tool for fishing, although it's certainly not mandatory. It follows the same trend of making the same activity easier once you've already done it a bunch, like unlocking Avara through spy missions or getting weapon arcanes from Steelpath Acolytes. Scan Matter is a far less useful mod. It will periodically and temporarily extend the loot radar of your minimap by 60 meters. It doesn't maintain the radar of discovered loot, nor does it distinguish between different types of loot, nor do anything else differently to loot radar. It just occasionally boosts the range. Oxylus also has a gold precept available from Cephalon Samaris, which is Botanist. This will scan plants found in ordinary missions just like Helios would, except Botanist will continue to scan plants even when their codex entry is complete. This can allow for passive looting of plants, useful for the Silver Grove quest, and then making Apothix after the quest to farm some of the mods unique to Silver Grove Spectres. Once again, Oxylus is just bringing quality of life. And then finally of the Sentinels, likely the last one you'd pick up if you didn't have a guide telling you to do otherwise, is Nautilus. To get Nautilus, you must either loot the abandoned derelicts found in Corpus Railjack missions in Neptune Proxima, or you need to stick around for rotations B and C of Ava Vector, the Corpus Railjack defense mission on Neptune Proxima. The good news if you don't want to do that is the whole set of Nautilus parts and its blueprint are tradable with other players. Once constructed, Nautilus comes with 2 unique precepts, Auto Omni and Cordon. Auto Omni is a Railjack repair precept, able to instantly and freely fix hull breaches and fires once every 20 seconds on the Railjack, so long as you're in range. No Revlite is consumed by the Sentinel this way. You don't need line of sight, but you do need to get reasonably close to the damage in order for Auto Omni to kick in. It's not a broadly useful mod, requiring you to be in a Railjack mission, on the Railjack, and in close proximity to the damage. Given it's possible to run many missions without suffering fire hazards and hull breaches, or you can just use an NPC crew to fix it, the application dwindles. The other precept, Cordon, is a crowd control ability. Every 15 seconds it will group up enemies within 30 meters. This again doesn't require any line of sight to activate, which means you can't really time or control when Cordon happens. On the plus side, it also doesn't alert affected enemies if you're trying to be sneaky. Broadly speaking, I'd say it's helpful, but not in a particularly game-changing way, leaving Nautilus, like a few other Sentinels, in a position of not really achieving a whole lot on its own. Now while this is the extent of the unique precepts, Sentinels can be equipped with a whole lot of other mods to support you in your missions. Assault Mode is the go-to mod for turning on the Sentinel's weapon, allowing it to shoot at alerted enemies within 30 meters whilst you're not invisible. Sentinels can use Anti-Grav Array to boost your jump height, Sanctuary to protect you when you're reviving allies, Shield Charger and Guardian to boost your shields, and Mediray to heal you periodically for a small portion of your max health, just to name a few mods. Ideally, you should mix and match to suit the mission you're bringing the Sentinel to and what Warframe it is being paired with. As for the Sentinel weapons, to say there is an imbalance would be a massive understatement. In fact, they're so imbalanced, I'm only going to spend your time talking about 2 of them. The Artax is the weapon that comes with Taxon, so it will be your very first Sentinel weapon unless you intentionally skip it. It is terribly weak for damage, with a base of only 5 DPS unmodded. For comparison, the Mark I Bratton has an unmodded base DPS of 140, so instead of using the Artax to deal damage, its real strength lies in the guaranteed cold procs. With every hit, it'll apply a cold proc, slowing down the enemy that it's targeting. Fire rate and multi-shot do not seem to increase the rate of these forced cold procs, so you pretty much get full benefit unmodded. Now the next 8 Sentinel weapons all have higher damage, but that damage in most cases is still categorically terrible and hardly worth an Orokin Catalyst to support it. A couple of the weapons can challenge the Mark I Bratton, but that's about it. But that 10th Sentinel, Nautilus, didn't get the memo on how weak Sentinel should be. Its signature weapon, the Verglas, is basically what happens when you strap a normal Tenno weapon onto a Sentinel and call it a day. No, really, it has the exact same stats as the Glaxion, a Mastery Rank 8 beam weapon with innate cold damage. Only now, it's attached to your aimbot Sentinel of choice alongside whatever destruction you equip yourself with. You can, for example, mod your Verglas for viral heat, and have a Sentinel capable of soloing Steel Path Exterminate missions. It'll be slower than you probably, but it will get there. In light of this, you can see why I ignore every other Sentinel weapon. Either you pick up guaranteed cold procs to make your life easier against some enemies, or you give your Sentinel enough firepower to do the mission for you. Yeah, it's no Kuvazar, but when it comes to Sentinel weapons, the Verglas has no competition. Now through all of this, I've not actually given any builds, as it will mostly come down to what you have available and what you are trying to achieve. This build here is my go-to Carrier Prime build. The Looter Precept first means that's activating as much as possible. It's got enemy and loot radar with primed Animal Instinct, heals my frame with Mediray, and boosts its own armor with Synth Fiber, which allows me to pick up health orbs whilst I'm at max health. That works very nicely with the Warframe mod Equilibrium. I've got primed regen to give Carrier more lives, vacuum for obvious loot scooping, ammo case to maintain my ammo supplies on my weapon, enhanced vitality to give Carrier more breathing room with hit points, repair kit to heal Carrier over time, and assault mode to enable it to attack. Optionally, ammo case can be substituted for Guardian for shield restoration, basically giving me extra lives on squishier frames rather than extra ammo. Likewise, Synth Fiber can be swapped for Fired Up to trade out defense on the Sentinel for more DPS from Verglas. For the Verglas, this is the build I typically run with to get those heat and viral procs onto whichever enemy it's targeting. This then is the Sentinel that you'll usually see in my other videos, often with Verglas taken off if I'm trying to show you a weapon. For normal missions, a Prime Sentinel can even outlast some public mission teammates. Just keep yourself moving and watch out for those electric procs. So this has been one of my longer guides to cover all the Sentinels and their unique precepts. If you found this useful, make sure to check out my Twitch channel as well, where I cover even more topics live, or you can support all the videos I do via Patreon. That's all from me for now though, so as always, build Sentinels, equip Verglas, and fight well, Tenno.